Every business of a certain size was always disconnected because it was physically impossible to house all the talent you needed under just one roof. We were separated by business units, time zones, geography, and brands. In the old days, we'd talk about overcoming silos and consolidating platforms and unifying messages, and these were all worthy exercises until 2020, when we actually disconnected from each other. Nearly half of the workforce was forced home and to fend for themselves. We worried about productivity because our offices had been systems of surveillance as much as they'd been systems of support. How would the sausage get made, we wondered, if we didn't have our eyes on it? And then we discovered that productivity leveled, and then it soared, and that performance wasn't solely determined by proximity. So we rethought our policies, we divested ourselves of property, we reinvested our capital, and we widened our view to realize that productivity wasn't the only measure worth mentioning. People were productive, but they were also burned out, and they no longer felt capable of managing unexpected challenges. We began to look again at the conditions that needed to exist so employees could be both productive and positive. We found that connection to the mission of the business and to each other was a fundamental human need and a pretty tough balancing act. At a time where we have more ways to connect than ever, many of them within the palm of our hands, people are lonelier and more isolated, and our employees have never been more disconnected. True connection is not about features. It's about philosophy. It's about relationships. We're living through another one of those moments. Outside, the world is changing, and inside at work, the average company is living through 2 to 3 enterprise-wide transformations. We were able to survive then and thrive because of the people we were connected to. Work represents a huge system of support because that's where the people are. Plus ça change, plus ça même chose. Welcome to A-Listed. Welcome back to A-Listed. I'm so excited to welcome Rebecca Wettemann, who leads Valoir, to our show. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks. It's great to be here, David.
Rebecca, you've spent your career advising global enterprises on how they invest in and get return from technology, whether it's cloud computing or AI, and also employee and customer experience. What can you tell us about Valoir, and what are you seeing at the moment that has you either excited or a little bit worried?
Sure. So Valoir's been around about 7 years. We're an analyst firm, but I've been helping companies understand and maximize the value of technology for a long time. We can't do a podcast today without talking about AI, which has everybody really excited, but also I think really nervous. I think we moved from 2 years ago, real AI FOMO, to what I call today AI FOMO, fear of messing up. They want to get the value from AI and they're excited about it, but they also recognize there are some risks there and some challenges in making sure that it works to our advantage.
You know, it occurs to me that change is really all that work is, and every 3 or 5 years we have a different wave that we ride. The last change that I can recall that felt as big as this was around 2020, as we were all of a sudden, because of a global pandemic, adjusting to new modes of working. Almost half the workforce went home globally, really fending for themselves. Are there lessons learned from that period 5-6 years ago that you think prepare us or serve as warning signs for the current moment?
I think a couple of things. Work from home taught us that, lo and behold, when we asked adults to do what they were supposed to do, most of them were pretty good at playing along. Right. It also exposed sort of the cracks in management style that maybe didn't work very well. I think the upside is it taught us a lot about experimentation. And it also taught us that left to our own devices, responsible adults will determine sometimes better ways of doing work than they had traditionally been done. And so I think when we look at AI, people are really thinking about, A, how do I sort of get my hands dirty in a bunch of different places so I can learn how this works? But also, how do I give myself a little bit of grace to fail in safe ways so that I can learn from what I've done and be able to get towards more kind of transformational change.
Amy Edmondson recently said that the future of work is learning. And I think what she was talking about was not learning and development technologies, but that spirit of experimentation you were talking about, where it's okay to fail and you sort of remove some of the fear from experimenting. Are you seeing the same?
Absolutely. And I think what ChatGPT and the others gave us was that opportunity to democratize AI failure across a broad population. I'll tell you, David, I actually vibe coded my first app 2 weeks ago. Now, I could not write a line of code to save my life. But the fact that I, as a completely non-technical dummy, could figure it out, actually get something close to professional production working, just shows you how many opportunities there are for all of us to grow and learn and experiment with the technology in meaningful ways.
What's the app focused on?
It is a value coach. So it will talk you through what you're thinking about doing with AI in your own organization and use our value methodology to help you rank those potential AI projects in terms of total benefit versus total risk.
What's that value methodology all about?
So it's really what I've developed over the years, helping customers build the business case for technology. So it looks at sort of the four rather key factors that drive value around people, process, price, and potential, and then the factors of risk around integration, intelligence, and impact.
This show is really focused on both the science and the stories of appreciation at work, and we speak at different altitudes about why we're excited about appreciation. One of them is the technology component, and I'm bullish on this category because I can't think of another technology that every single employee inside an organization can access and that also touches every part of the employee experience the way that recognition and reward does. Do you share that enthusiasm?
I do too. And I think it got a bad rap. We spent a lot of money on employee engagement, largely because of COVID, right? Like there were rewards programs, but we didn't really think about them necessarily as really broader engagement initiatives until all the money that we were spending on outings and pizza parties pre-COVID went into, I've got to have some technology to touch employees, right? And so I think we're seeing the pendulum swing back a little bit now where people are saying maybe engagement isn't that important. But I think they're missing, A, that it does drive real results for organizations, and B, that when I use technology for an engagement strategy, I get incredibly rich and interesting data about what employees are doing, what they know, how they're contributing, what their skills are, how they work together with others, all of those points of connection that can be really important data when I'm trying to think about where my workforce goes next.
Mm-hmm. I think that's especially important because inside most organizations, they're living through 2 to 3 different enterprise-wide transformations at the moment. And then outside, when we look beyond our organizations, just change is abundant. I think about recognition and the positive reinforcement layer as being, a critical element of change management.
Absolutely. And if you think about where we are in the current environment, people are worried. People are stressed. That sort of hierarchy of needs beyond the kind of physical safety, to feel emotional safety, to feel those connections, to feel empathy at work, I think is super important. And to go back to the sort of double-edged sword that is AI, people are worried about what AI means for their job or lack thereof moving forward. And I think what having that system of engagement does is enable me to not just make those connections, but to understand the connections between my work and other people and those skills of the future, right? If I really have the data where I understand who is achieving goals in a meaningful way and how they're being recognized. I can think about what a future leader looks like. I can think about what a future career path looks like. I can think about what the future of work looks like in a more contextual and meaningful way.
I'm so glad you mentioned connection. It occurs to me that we have more ways to connect than ever before, and many of them are in the palm of our hand. But
Which is a good and bad thing.
Well, exactly. And I was going to say that, research from our institute shows that employees have never been more disconnected. They're disconnected from managers, from peers, from the mission of the organization, from the values of the organization. And also with all of these tools, they're context switching all day between the systems they need to get work done. Do we run the risk of our tools being bad for us?
Look, I think COVID was a time of real disengagement and introversion. I don't think we've yet recovered from that.
No.
And certainly our little handheld devices aren't helping. I think, though, in the enterprise tech environment, I have to think about how do I engage with people in the flow of work? How do I give them learning experiences that are connected and not disconnected? And if I'm thinking about return to office strategies, how do I make that a perk for connection and not a checkbox for managers?
Do you think that employees are worried about AI, or do you think they're worried that the work they do every single day is invisible to the people that matter, or are both true?
I think they're both true, but I also think that no one says, let me go to the office or my office and do meaningless work today.
Right. That's right. I'm going to mail it in. That's right.
Nobody aspires to do grunt work all day. So I think folks are thinking creatively. And I think we saw this already to a certain extent during COVID when we were talking before about people left to their own devices. People were finding ways to automate things that were part of their work that were not valuable and meaningful to them. AI has just made that even easier for a broader swath of the population.
Part of your job is speaking to lots of leaders inside organizations. What are some of the things that are on their worry list at the moment as we live through this age of AI?
If I talk to HR leaders, they are both nervous and excited. They recognize that they need to understand on a deeper level, on a more consistent level, on a more current level than they previously had about who their employees are, what do they do, what do they know, what do they contribute, right? The whole sort of skills question. We've been talking about skills-based organizations for decades. Right? Very few organizations have their house of cards in order when it comes to skills, but they're recognizing that from an HR perspective, to be able to have a meaningful conversation with senior leaders about who are our people, what do they do, what can we automate, what can we augment with AI, they have to have their sort of finger on the pulse of skills within their organization. So while they're excited about it, they also realize that if they don't get that sort of skills castle in order, somebody's going to take the keys away from them. So I think it's a time for HR to feel the pressure, but I'm also hearing them be very excited about the fact that if we're really going to blow things up, like, give me the match, right? Like, I want to be a part of this party in a meaningful way.
Do you think it's harder to be a manager inside an organization today than it used to be? And the reason I asked the question, to sort of front load it a little bit, is it occurs to me that we're leaving an era of one size fits all programs to an era of hyper personalization. If you have an organization with 500 people or 5,000, it's hard to meet people in the individual moments that matter to them. Do you think it's harder to be a manager today?
I think it's harder to be a manager. I think we also have to recognize that we have not done a very good job of preparing the managers today to manage in uncertain times, in a down economy, in a lot of economic uncertainty for employees. We've promoted a lot of people who are great performers, not necessarily given them the skills to be good managers. And one of the challenges with AI and the speed of change and the volume of communication and data that's out there is it exposes those kind of gaps and those kind of weaknesses pretty quickly.
You write and think about value, and you talked about the value framework earlier. I see a bit of a misalignment today inside of organizations. I think there's a misalignment between what creates value for an organization and what employees value themselves. And this is sort of that hyper-personalization idea I was getting to. How do you think do you see the same gap? And then if you do, how do you think we better close it?
I think it comes down to management. I think having that clear vision and being able to help individuals connect the dots. What we've also found with social media and with sort of the fragmentation of the media environment as well is that we've enabled a lot of people to feel very empowered to be parties of one or parties of very few. So being able to make those connections between people, getting people to work together, showing them the opportunity to work together. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? I think is something that we need to do a better job of empowering managers to do.
I think you're exactly right. We've been paying attention within our institute about change readiness really since 2020. And in 2020, we found that about a third of employees felt capable of meeting unexpected challenges. And then every year since then, it's gone down to the current point where just 23% of employees feel that way. And what our research shows is that connection is, the connection that I have to my peers, to my mission, to my manager, to my individual mandate. That's one of the greatest predictors of change readiness. So I love that you're pulling on that connection thread.
Yeah, I mean, it was who was it? Was it Henry Ford that said coming together is beginning and working together is success?
Oh, I like that. If it's not, maybe it might be Wettemann. You never know. Do you think investments in people technology are tougher sells today than they were in 2020?
Absolutely. For a couple of reasons. I mean, first, again, that money that we weren't spending on outings and in-person connection, we said, we better budget some more for HR tech. Secondly, HR was happy to take that money, having been under-resourced for so long, but didn't necessarily do a good job of communicate the value of how it was being used and the value that it was delivering sort of beyond the walls of HR. And so now we're seeing the pendulum swing back a little bit, particularly as boards are saying, show me the value of what you're doing with AI. And by the way, why do you have 3 different applications for engagement of employees? So I think HR is sort of being forced to sharpen the pencil a bit and say, let's make sure that we can show the value of what we're doing. And I'll tell you, because you mentioned rewards and recognition before, very few of them were even scratching the surface on what I think is the real value of having a robust system of engagement and recognition, which is this data source that tells me in real time what my employees are doing, who appreciates their work, why they appreciate their work, how it aligns with company values, how it aligns with corporate objectives, all of those really, really important things that I just don't get from the performance review process. I mean, I think performance management is fundamentally broken.
Why do you say that?
It is performative, not management. It's a single point in time, best case or worst case, depending on how you look at it. I'm doing it every quarter or every year, right? It's based on a limited view. I mean, there's a reason why the first HR application that everybody got excited about around AI was drafting performance reviews, because everybody hates to do it, right? So I think there's an opportunity to go from this sort of stochastic, performative. I mean, if you look at the layoffs happening in tech, for every layoff story, there's 10, I just got laid off and my performance review was great story, right? Which is a sign to me that the stuff isn't working. We can move from that sort of stochastic, single point in time, manager subjective, binary, outperforms, underperforms kind of system to wouldn't it be nice to know in the last 30 days if people have been more likely to do these kind of things that I would like for them to do than not? Or as I'm thinking about whom I should promote from individual contributor to director or manager, who's modeling the kind of behaviors that what I think my most successful managers should do. It's those kind of things that I get from that rich collaborative data around engagement and in recognition that I don't get from a sort of force-fed process.
This might be an impossible question to answer, but we've been talking about recognition and reward as a technology that you feel is misunderstood. We're talking about performance management as a technology that's broken. As you're advising organizations to design for the future of work, what advice would you give them?
I think we have to remember that if people won't use technology, the ROI is always negative. And the goal of technology, and particularly the goal of AI, should be to enable us to be more human and connected at work, and not the opposite.
Rebecca, thank you so much for spending time with us on A-Listed. I can't wait to see you again in person.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate it.
Emma, you unfortunately missed my conversation with Rebecca Wettemann because you were searching for orangutans, as I understand it.
I was.
Our listeners demand to know, did you find any?
I did. So I went to Borneo for a couple of weeks. I saw orangutans both in a sanctuary where they call it semi-wild, so they feed them, so they come, but they can come and go as they please. But we did see some in the wild as well, which was amazing. And I think I can link this back to the conversation that we have on the podcast, and I think that is about the...
What a show off.
It's loose. The world we're operating in today is fast-paced. There's a lot happening, but taking the time to actually disconnect is incredibly powerful. Staying in a jungle lodge in Borneo that only had Wi-Fi in the restaurant, which was a really nice circuit breaker, is I couldn't lie in bed at night and doom scroll and things like that. It was about being present and actually taking time out for myself. So I'm sorry I missed the recording with Rebecca of this podcast, but I have come back refreshed and ready to go, and I have listened to it, and am very interested to unpack what you spoke about.
Well, so what are some of the top themes? I think AI was all over that conversation. Was that a takeaway for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca spoke about how people are really worried about what AI means for their job, and I think there's a couple of lenses to that. I'm worried if my job will exist next week, next month, next year, in 5 years. I'm worried about what my job will look like. It won't be the same as it is today. So what does that mean? What skills do I need in order to ensure that I still have a job, that I'm still employable, and all of that in an AI-empowered workforce? So I really liked how she pulled on a couple of those threads around the uncertainty that employees are feeling today, because I think that is something that we all need to keep top of mind as we create future-ready workforces.
I love that. What else stood out for you? Maybe we did explore recognition a little bit, and her excitement for the value of recognition and reward. What jumped out for you there?
Yeah, Rebecca talked about the value of the data. And I think that is one of the most undervalued assets that organisations who have a high frequency recognition program actually have at their fingertips. The ability to have that real-time telemetry as to what behaviours are being lived in your organisation today, how behaviour is changing, what skills you have today, what skills exist in different pockets of the business, and then, helps you create that plan of what skills you need to develop for the future, how recognition ties into performance data so that it's your performance conversations and not just a manager conversation that are rife for recency bias. You've got 360-degree feedback coming in through your recognition program throughout the year that's helped shaping those performance conversations. So I love that she brought that up, because I think that is one of the things that a lot of leaders are not realizing, that they actually have this and can tap into that to get those insights to help shape their talent plans, their mobility plans, their skills development plans, everything that is top of mind for HR leaders at the moment.
Well, I'm glad you're back. It's better when you're here. I can't speak on behalf of the orangutans, but I'm glad that you found them. Thanks for being back.
Thank you, and thanks for continuing the conversations even when I'm out exploring the world. That will happen many times, I'm sure, and I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. That's too Canadian of you. You and I are spending too much time together.
We obviously are. Thank you to everybody for listening. You can access the A-Listed podcast on Spotify, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.